1973, upon the religious Jewish holiday of Yom Kippur, a war broke out against Israel when Egypt and Syria attacked the state. And as opposed to its previous 1967 Six-Day War, which was considered to be an Israeli victory, this Yom Kippur War definitely left its mark on Israeli society. Tell me about the Yom Kippur War. Why was it so shocking to Israel?
The war broke up on Shabbat, noon, after almost 7 years of euphoria in Israel after the victory of the 6 Days War. Israel was almost convinced that it is a kind of a superpower. Nobody believed that Egypt or Syria will dare to attack Israel, not on Yom Kippur, not at all. The Yom Kippur War is a total surprise in Israel. Speaking about the 2 or 3 first day, the internal feeling was towards the end of the state of Israel. The attack was massive, the losses were terrible, and it took time to understand what is really happening.
How is Israel perceived after that war?
The Israeli collective memory looks at this Yom Kippur War as a failure. Not as a defeat, but as a failure. We are speaking about a trauma, a collective trauma. Look, for example, after the 6 Days War in Israel were published 44 victory albums to show how we were heroes, how we won the war. And after the Yom Kippur War, published only 2 white books. The one is the list of those who fall in the war, and the other is the document of the inquiry committee, Vadat Agranat.
We're now 40 years later. What lessons has Israel learned, if at all?
What have we learned? I'm afraid not too much. If we are looking at the first Lebanon war, speaking about the aspiration to conquer Lebanon and to change the regime in Lebanon, means that we did not learn so much. It takes time to deal with collective trauma, as well with private trauma. Look, for example, the memory park in Moscow was established only 50 years after the Second World War. The movies, Schindler's List or Shoah, it took about 50 years to bring it to the audience. The same is happening in Israel with the Yom Kippur War. It takes time. There is an expression in Hebrew, אין לנו על מי לסמוך, אלא על אבינו שבשמיים. We have nobody to rely upon but God. This is one of the perceptions that changed totally since the Yom Kippur War. You don't rely upon anybody and anything but what you check yourself.
Now, people say that history has a way of repeating itself. Based on your knowledge, what are your predictions for this region?
2 remarks. First, things are interesting the way war are starting. We'll criticize the way Barack Obama is handling the issue with Syria. I think that he is very wise. Look at the 6 Days War in Israel. It went on very well after 3 weeks of hesitations in Israel. Discussion, even voting in the government that failed 10 days before the war. Wars that start after long discussion may be more successful. And another remark about our situation. Peace is achieved with Jordan and Egypt, and looking at the changes and what might happen in Syria, I think that reconciliation with the Palestinian now is necessary in order to put Israel in a situation that it will no longer be in the focus of the Islamic world.
The Middle East is in quite of a volatile state at the moment as we enter another Yom Kippur holiday this weekend. Egypt is rocky on the south and all eyes are on Syria in the north. Only that this time, Israelis do not appear to be oblivious to the dangers foreseen. For JN1, I'm Sivan Raviv, Israel.